खामोशियां आवाज है तुम सुनने तो आओ कभी.
Juan was getting ready to go to give the food to her workaholic husband. Past few days, he was so busy with his work, he didn't have time for her. He goes to the office before she wakes up, and when he came home, he just goes to sleep without roughly talking to her. Yesterday, they both had heated argument. Flashback. One was waiting for him till he came back. It was 2 p.m. already when the car parking sound came from the outside. She knows he's here. When he entered the house, his state was messy. He sat on the sofa and put his head to the rest. His hair was rough. He asked water for wine, but wine didn't listen to him. Jungkook looked at her attitude. He wasn't moving from her place. He was already so tired. JK, can you bring me water? When she didn't listen, he frustratingly got up and went to the kitchen to pour some water for him. He was so hungry. He looked for some food in the kitchen, but there was nothing. It means she didn't make food. He came outside. JK, you didn't make food? He asked in a tired tone. Wine, yeah, you don't have time for me, so I don't have time to make food for you. Why you come home late? She said, unbothering his condition. Jungkook closed his eyes frustratedly. Jungkook, what is your problem, Wine? Why are you not understanding? I came home very tired not to see my wife adding more burden on my shoulder. I work for both of us. I didn't even eat anything from the morning. His volume rose. He grabbed the keys and went from the house outside. A wave of guilt passed through her and realization hit her. She failed to understand him because of her desires. His state shows how much tired he was because of his work. A home is a place where one finds peace. She sighed, sat on the sofa, looking at the door from where he left. She should have made food for him. She quickly went to the kitchen and prepared something. After 20 minutes, she called him, but he wasn't picking the call. She sighed and sat on the chair. After a while, she slept there, putting her head on the table. Cheeky Pop. Later at night, Jungkook entered the home. The lights were still on. He went to eat something from outside. He realized she was just asking him his time. She wasn't asking something big. He sighed. He regretted that he should shouted on her, so he brought food for her too. He looked around the house and found her sleeping on the chair. He went closer to her and saw she prepared food for him. He sighed and put the bags on table. He then picked her up gently, not to wake her up, and carried her to the bedroom. He laid her on the bed and covered her with a blanket. He also took off his shoes and changed his clothes. He then laid beside her and pulled her in a hug. Chicky, I promise I'll give you my time. I'm sorry. I'll wind up everything tomorrow. Then he too drifted into sleep. When Wine woke up, she found herself in the bed and looked beside her. It was empty. It means he carried her to the bedroom. He already left, she sighed and went to freshen up. He wasn't home until afternoon. Flashback ends. Now she called a driver to drop her to Jungkook's office. She made his favorite food. She didn't tell about this to Jungkook. She wanted to give surprise to him. She reached his office building and went inside. The receptionist saw her and put to say hello. Receptionist, how are you doing, Mrs. June? When I'm good. Is Jungkook is in his office? Receptionist, yes, he's just preparing for the meeting. Wine nodded and went to his room. When Wine reached his office, she turned the knob and opened it, but when she saw next made her halt, the bags fell from her hand to the ground where a girl was standing, tiptoeing so close to Jungkook and kissing him. Jungkook was surprised to see Wine here and looking at him in this state. Jungkook pushed the girl aside. Jungkook, Wine, it's not true, he said, walking towards Wine. Wine, so this was the reason behind your late comings. I should have noticed this before. Wine, whose eyes were filled with tears, she went from there and ran away before he could reach her. Jungkook, Wine, wait, princess. Jungkook looked back at the girl. Jungkook, how dare you come to my office and try to touch me, he said, shouting at her. That girl was afraid seeing him like this, shouting at her. JK, guards, take this girl outside. Jungkook ran outside behind Wine. He knows everything is messed up. He called Wine multiple times, but she wasn't picking up the phone calls. He reached the reception. JK, who dare send this girl in my office? He shouted at them. A girl came forward and said, I am new. Boss, she said she was your girlfriend, so I thought, JK, you are fired. You don't even know who is your boss' wife. He went outside and saw Wine walking quickly on the road. He sat in his car and follows her. There was no traffic, but she wasn't looking at any direction and funny where her steps were taking. She walked to an abandoned road. Jungkook kept shouting her name time to time, but she wasn't listening to her. By the time he reached near her, Jungkook, Wine, stop and get in the car. He sat from the window. Wine wasn't saying anything and just walking fastly. Jungkook speeded the car and stopped it in front of her. He came out of the car and stood in front of her. Please, you have to understand me. It wasn't what it looked like. Shiki said with his pleading tone. One, I kept waiting for you at home every time, thinking that you were busy with work. I tried to understand you, but what you did, she was shouting. But you are here spending your days and night with some random girls. Jungkook moves closer to her. Princess, at least give me a chance to. Before he could say anything, a slap was echoed in the air. Jungkook's face moved to the side because she slapped him. The fingerprints of her hand were printed on his face. When I trusted you, Jungkook. How could you? Her face was full of tears. How will you feel when you saw your husband kissing a girl? Cheeky looked back at her again. Home face was full of terror. He moved closer to her and cupped her cheeks with his hands, and his lips met her for a long time. His kiss was soft yet urgent, a silent plea for forgiveness, for understanding, for a chance to make things right. He pulled apart from her. JK, listen to me, please. I didn't kiss her. I don't even know who she was. He pleaded with his voice. Wine turned around with tears on her cheeks and started walking in opposite direction with blurry eyes. She doesn't want to see him right now. Jungkook quickly moved forward and held her from the back, his hands wrapping around her from behind tightly. Jungkook, stop crying. It wasn't like that. I have a proof. Just give me a chance. Wine was crying with hiccups. She wasn't saying anything. JK, she entered my room and I was surprised seeing a random girl in my office. I asked her to leave, but she grew closer to me. I stood up to send her away from office. I don't know how in a face she just approached me. I pushed her within a second, but you came at the time and saw me in that position. Please believe me. Ryan, how will you feel if you saw me touching someone else? She said while crying. Leave me alone. She tried to come out of his grip. He held her more tightly. Jungkook, I'm sorry. Please believe me. Just trust me. They both were standing there for the whole minute, where one was crying her heart out and Jungkook was calming her down. He turned her around and wiped her tear from cheeks. He kissed her both eyes softly. She started to calm down in his arms. He was inches apart from her face. He cupped her cheeks with his hand. I love you so much, princess. There is no other girl in my life except you. Only you. His phone beeped. They both looked at the phone. He got the CCTV. Look, this is a proof. He turned on the video when the girl entered the room and before she kissed him forcefully, Wine took the mobile and turned it off and handed it over to him. Wine looked down, not looking at him. He held her waist and pulled her into him and joined their forehead. Look up at me. Wine slowly looked up at him, who was already looking at her. She saw his left side redden due to his slap. She put her hand on his cheeks and creases it with her fingers. Jungkook closed his eyes, feeling her fingers on his face. When, sorry, is it painful? She looked at him, who was lost in her touch. She bit her lower lip. She took her hand back before she could do. Jungkook held it again and placed it back on his cheeks. This gives me peace. Stay like this for a while. Wine tiptoes and kissed him on his cheeks many times softly. Jungkook looked at her focused. She looked at his lips and then eyes and then his lips again. She moved more closer. He let her do whatever she was doing. He held her cheeks to make it more deep. They both were like that for a moment and they separated. With a tender smile, he intertwined their hand, bounded by unbreakable bond of love. And as we walked into the embrace of the night, hearts entwined, I knew that no matter what trials awaited us ahead, we would face them together.